Day by day our lives are turning, like a potter's wheel they spin. You are choosing your own maker. Choose your potter's wheel, my friend.
In our last study, we established the context for what Jesus told his disciples in Matthew 24. We found two questions they asked, which Jesus will now answer in the remainder of the chapter. The first question revolved around when the temple and its buildings would be destroyed, so we may expect Jesus to begin his answer on that very point. Now, a physical temple was not God's design for Christ's work. If you doubt that, think for a moment about the conversation Jesus had with the Samaritan woman about true worship in John 4. This conversation took place at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, before some claim that he changed his plans. The Jews and Samaritans assumed that a physical temple must be present for the Messiah's reign. Jesus came into the world with the intention of taking this focus away and centering service on God in the hearts of people. We know this because he told the Samaritan woman, "Woman, believe me, an hour is coming when neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem shall you worship the Father. You worship that which you do not know. We worship that which we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But an hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and truth. For such people the Father seeks to be his worshipers. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." That's John 4, verses 21 through 24. It would not be in the Samaritan's mountain, which was Mount Gerizim, nor would it be in Jerusalem where the Jews worshiped. The time had come for that physical focus to change. And please notice that Jesus said the time now is in verse 23. He had come to bring about that change in focus, among other things. The disciples would be thinking that the physical Jerusalem temple would be the center of the Messiah's work. But now they're being told that it will be destroyed. In their minds, the question of when becomes monumental. So Jesus begins with the beginning of their question. When will these things be? These things are the things Jesus just spoke of, the destruction of those beautiful buildings. So what's the answer? We won't read the entire response. I'll leave that to you. But here's a summary of what Jesus said. They will hear about wars and rumors of wars, famines and earthquakes, and the disciples will be delivered to temptation and killed. And notice that he said to the apostles, "They will deliver you to tribulation and will kill you, and you will be hated." That's in verse 9. This would happen to the apostles. Those disciples are clearly in view here. Many will fall away, false prophets come, lawlessness will increase, the gospel will be preached in the whole world, and then the end shall come. Verse 14. We tend to think of the whole world being the entire globe, but that isn't the way New Testament writers used it. Paul said in Romans 1:8, "I thank my God through Jesus Christ for you all, because your faith is being proclaimed throughout the whole world." He also told the Colossians regarding the gospel, which has come to you just as in all the world. Colossians 1:6. Paul quoted Psalm 19 and verse 4. Their voice has gone out into all the earth and their words to the ends of the world, clearly saying it had been fulfilled. That's in Romans 10:18. So don't let anyone tell you it hasn't made it into what New Testament writers called the whole world. First century inspired writers said it went into the whole world. However you want to understand that, it's the truth. When would these things be? When would the temple be destroyed with all of its beautiful buildings and porticos? History tells us that it did happen in AD 70. And Jesus is telling the disciples, what you think is so grand and beautiful that it could never be destroyed, it will be destroyed. Jesus tells them to watch for signs which will warn of this impending destruction. The gospel would go into all the world, as we just noted. There would be something called an abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. When they saw this, they were to flee from Judea. That isn't Christ's second coming. What good would it do to flee from Judea? Well, Judea is specifically where the destruction is going to take place that Jesus is talking about here. And because we're running out of time, look at Matthew 24:34. Jesus says, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." What was the question? Who was asking the question? This destruction would take place before that generation would pass away. Next week, we'll talk more about which generation Jesus was referring to, and the week after, what the abomination of desolation was. Then we'll want to talk about the sun and moon being darkened and the stars falling from the sky. This is a really vivid prophecy. I hope you'll be back next week to take a closer look at what Jesus was saying.